Why do people commit crimes? Human nature is complex and multifaceted, and every action has its reason. This time, we will not discuss people with mental health issues and their tendencies towards violence. We will also exclude military personnel, individuals whose job is directly connected with eliminating enemies. It seems that the primary motives for life-threatening acts are material gain, revenge, exceeding the limits of necessary defense, and accidental incidents. Most crimes occurred domestically during conflicts and disputes when it seemed like everything was fine. However, these acts of violence are not a cause, but a consequence of human spirit degradation, leaving a permanent mark. On the morning of January 12, 2019, it was reported that 65-year-old Michael Redlick had passed away. Known in his circles, the former NBA executive with the Memphis Grizzlies and a beloved professor at the University of Central Florida died from a heart attack initially. However, upon the arrival of emergency services, it became clear that Mr. Redlick died from a stab wound to the chest. Various theories were considered, including self-inflicted harm. Later, forensic experts determined that the incident was a criminal act of taking a life. Sometime later, the perpetrator was identified. The person who helped Michael meet his end was his beloved wife. By June 2022, she stood trial. Yet this story is not straightforward. She did not admit guilt for the intentional crime and frequently changed her testimony. The legal battle between the prosecution and defense was long and heated. Ultimately, the court's verdict was unexpected for everyone. What really happened in the Winter Park suburb of Florida, USA? Who was the true victim? And could the tragedy have been prevented? Let's explore together. Sitting in the defendant's chair is 46-year-old Danielle Redlick. The accused is of short stature and slim build. Her chestnut hair has visibly grayed, either because she had no opportunity to visit a hairdresser, having spent about 3 years in custody, or perhaps the gray is a testament to her true turmoil and stress. Until 2019, she was just an ordinary working American woman, a mother of 2 wonderful children. A specialist in multimedia communications, she was not particularly well known. However, after the crime against her husband, her name was frequently highlighted in the media. This is what happens when the dirty laundry of seemingly respectable spouses is aired publicly. Danielle was born in 1976 in Florida. After some time, her family moved to Cleveland, Ohio. Her childhood was typical in many ways. She grew up kind and well-mannered with a creative nature. Danielle was the eldest child in her family. As she matured, her appreciation for beauty intensified. She enrolled at Valencia College, where she earned an Associate of Arts degree. Later, she was admitted to the psychology department at Baldwin Wallace University. In 1996, Danielle's mother, Caitlin Aquino, remarried. However, the marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years, after which Caitlin passed away from cancer. It turns out that she had been battling breast cancer for a long time. Thanks to her husband's comprehensive insurance, she received high-quality medical care, which was the primary reason for legally formalizing their marriage. Unfortunately, the treatment ultimately did not yield the desired result. After his wife's death, the man became not only a widower, but also a true father to her children. Since it was difficult for him to raise them alone, he asked for help from Caitlin, the eldest daughter. At that time, 22-year-old Danielle was living independently, but responded to the request. Thus, after Caitlin's death, Danielle, her brother and sister, and their stepfather, Michael Redlick, all ended up under one roof. Yes, you heard right. The very same Michael, who later became Danielle's husband and was perpetrated on a winter evening in 2019. At first, their relationship was built on friendship. Danielle took care of the younger kids and worked part-time at a bar at night. Michael was building his career in professional sports, involved in player recruitment. He grew very attached to the children who became like his own. He also felt comfortable with Danielle. Over time, she saw him as a dependable support. Despite the 20-year age difference, their interaction was easy and natural. Gradually, the man and woman grew closer. Neither age nor status bothered them. However, Danielle initially didn't want to make their relationship public to her family and kept it hidden for a while. With his new partner, Michael felt younger and more energetic, and she felt loved and protected. Since he had good connections, he easily found her a new job in an advertising agency. Besides, he had a high income and devoted all his free time to the family. Overall, things were going well for both of them. After some time, Mr. Redlick received a tempting job offer. He was invited to become the vice president of corporate sales for the Memphis Grizzlies basketball club. However, the new job required moving to another state. Without hesitation, he asked Danielle to come with him. But she hesitated. Danielle didn't want to change her familiar lifestyle, and she was still studying, so she declined. Yet their relationship continued long distance, and the lovers often saw each other. One day, he showed her the house he had bought for them, impressing her. The cottage was located in a picturesque area by the Mississippi River. The neighborhood was quiet and cozy. Ultimately, Danielle decided to move and live together. To ensure she had no doubts, he found her an interesting job in the radio industry. Later, Danielle recalled that at first, everything was perfect. It was only Michael's job that later brought changes. Many years later, during the trial against Danielle, her 15-year-old daughter Jaden testified. She spoke of how Michael was an excellent father who did a lot for his family. Along with her 8-year-old brother Sawyer, they attended one of the best schools, hoping to pursue careers in sports thanks to their dad's encouragement and support in enrolling them in sports programs. Jaden was close to her father, which she couldn't say about her mother, whom she saw as hysterical, manipulative, and toxic at times. The young lady believed that Danielle instigated all the conflicts at home while Michael tried to keep the family and peace intact. But was it really as the elder daughter perceived? And what caused discord in what seemed like a happy and united family? Mr. Redlick's new position came with increased responsibility and stress, and he had a difficult relationship with the management. This took a toll on him. He became very stressed and tired. Eventually, to relax and unwind, Michael turned to alcoholic beverages. Over time, this became a daily occurrence. He would often stay out late, returning home intoxicated and angry. The tension in the house was palpable. Danielle tried to support her husband, understanding his condition. After talking to her, it seemed he would calm down and promise to stop. But his promises were short-lived. One time, Michael missed a dinner they had planned together, which was not the first occurrence. But this time, they had specifically arranged to spend the evening together. Danielle was very upset and stated that if he couldn't make time for her, he should have warned her so she could make other plans. Heading towards the door, she made an ill-timed joke, which struck a nerve with Michael. He stood in the doorway and hit her across the face. The slap was so forceful that she staggered back. She then noticed that her clothes and the floor were splattered with blood. In shock, she recoiled from her husband, who began crying and apologizing. Clearly distressed, Michael tried to make amends immediately. He took his wife to a familiar sports doctor and explained what had happened. The doctor examined the unfortunate victim and provided first aid, then recommended seeing a dentist and a plastic surgeon, as the injuries were quite severe. Danielle even had a front tooth chipped. The next day, Michael arranged a memorable dinner, was very attentive and caring. Undoubtedly, his wife forgave him and did not report the incident anywhere. There was a fairly strict domestic violence law in the state, so Mrs. Redlick felt sympathy for her husband and decided not to cause him any further trouble. In fact, this was not the first warning sign. Danielle had already encountered similar behavior before. The incident happened while they were living together in Cleveland. At a concert, Danielle chatted with an ex-boyfriend, which made Michael jealous. On their way home, he dropped a few sarcastic comments about it. Danielle responded in kind. Unexpectedly, he hit her, then immediately apologized, noting that he did it because she hurt his feelings. Danielle forgave her partner, blaming herself as well. Over time, the incident was forgotten. After all, things happen in relationships. In 2003, the Redlicks welcomed their first child, a daughter named Jaden. A year later, the couple decided to legalize their relationship. It was a bright period in their lives. Everything was going well. However, Michael still faced challenges at work. The management changed, and he couldn't get the promotion he had hoped for. 7 years later, the family grew with the addition of a son named Sawyer. The parents were fully engaged in raising their children. If it weren't for Michael's job. The tension escalated, and he began drinking again. This led to more frequent conflicts. During one argument, he grabbed Danielle by the throat and pinned her against the wall, which terrified her. This time, his wife couldn't tolerate the rough behavior. She packed up, took the children, and moved in with her relatives. It's worth noting, they did not approve of the marriage initially, but eventually came to terms with it. Michael repeatedly visited her, apologizing and asking her to come back home. After some time, their relationship was restored. The following years were unstable. The Redlicks moved several times. The family patriarch was offered a job in California, where they lived for about 5 years. This period could hardly be called successful. The man again struggled with his issues and continued to indulge in drinking. There came a time when both spouses were unemployed and lived off their savings. In 2014, another move was on the horizon, this time to Indiana. However, the prospects were promising. To find a new home and settle matters, the man went ahead first. Danielle stayed in California with the children. They needed time to sell their old property and belongings. The constant moving had also become exhausting. It was difficult for the children to adapt to the rapidly changing environments. The whole process took a year. During this time, the family's financial situation improved. However, the marital relationship underwent changes. The distance and infrequent meetings affected them. Danielle and Michael grew distant and barely communicated. When the spouses finally reunited, they faced new issues. At one point, Danielle began to suspect her husband of infidelity. He became unusually cold and distant, and the former passion had faded. However, Michael found the strength to confess that his age and health were to blame. He had been embarrassed to mention this earlier, fearing he would lose his younger wife, but Danielle was grateful for his honesty and supported him as before. After trying numerous medications, the couple decided to undergo a course of hormone injections. Testosterone injections helped Michael rejuvenate physically and mentally. He seemed to become younger, regaining his former energy and vigor. With this came an increase in his aggressiveness. One evening, while watching a movie together, Michael fell asleep. Danielle went upstairs to rest. The next morning, he entered the bathroom while she was brushing her teeth and struck her on the head. He justified his action by saying she had not woken him up the evening before. She responded that she was tired of this and was leaving. This only angered him further, and he began to choke her. Poor Danielle could not defend herself and began to lose consciousness. At one moment, she felt like she was dying. After some time, Mrs. Redlick opened her eyes and saw her husband standing over her, scared and confused, begging for forgiveness. All Danielle could do was silently crawl away. After this incident, they continued to live in the same house and raise their children together. But from that time, their relationship fundamentally changed. Apparently, a point of no return had been reached. The man began to drink more frequently, and conflicts in the home increased, even over trivial matters. The number of times Michael's discontent escalated into physical aggression increased. However, the woman did not leave him. Despite her dissatisfaction with the situation and resentment towards her husband, she continued to love him deeply. The ongoing situation also affected Danielle. She became nervous and irritable, withdrew into herself. To distract herself, she took up photography. Nevertheless, their family still appeared respectable, as most of their disagreements did not extend beyond the home. By the end of 2014, the Redlicks finally settled in Florida. This time, Michael decided to change his career path, tired of the constant stress. He took a position as Director of External Affairs and Partnership Programs at the University of Central Florida and began teaching. Although his income was less than what he made in the NBA, the job brought him enjoyment and stability. Initially, the family rented a home, but after a year, they purchased their own property in the quaint area of Winter Park. Their family home was impressive. The house was designed in a Mediterranean style and had a huge square footage. Danielle favored the attic floor, which served as her retreat. She often spent nights there, especially when Michael had bouts of anger. Testosterone injections rejuvenated him and restored their intimate life, but even during intimate moments, he could be harsh. Their relationship remained tense and unstable. Against this backdrop, Danielle developed an alcohol dependency. While Michael worked and supported the family, Danielle managed the household and children, increasingly withdrawing into herself. The numerous disputes eventually led to the couple separating in 2016. Despite this, Michael continued to see the children and support them financially, paying the bills. By this time, Danielle had found a job at a school. New acquaintances helped her out of her depression, and her responsibilities restored her independence. However, she still continued to see Michael. He could come and go as he pleased. During one of these days, another argument ensued, after which Danielle ended up in the hospital with a concussion. She kept silent again and did not tell the truth about what happened, fearing it would cause problems for her husband. But this time, Michael took her silence for granted. During questioning, Danielle confessed that in early October 2016, something extraordinary happened. Her husband had tried to run her over with his car. She was saved only because she managed to jump into the bushes. After this, Danielle went to the police department. However, when detectives began to inquire in detail about the incident, she changed her mind and left. The reason was the same as always. Later, the couple reconciled and moved back in together. However, this turned out to be a fateful decision for both of them. At around 9 a.m. on January 12, 2019, a 911 call was made. On the other end of the line, a woman introduced herself as Danielle Redlick and reported that her husband Michael had died from a heart attack. When the rescue service arrived at the scene and entered the house, they immediately noticed a strong smell of cleaning agent. At the entrance to the living room, the team encountered a bucket filled with pink-colored water. Beyond this, a scene from a thriller unfolded. A man lay on the floor in a pool of blood, lifeless. It was clear that the unfortunate man had not died from a heart attack as his wife had claimed, but from a penetrating knife wound. The woman who made the call was also found with cuts on her wrists. Paramedics provided first aid before taking her to the hospital. Following them, the police began their investigation. When law enforcement examined the scene, they were certain that Michael Redlick's life had been taken. It was unlikely that he could have inflicted such a fatal injury on himself. Later, forensic analysis confirmed that the blood traces in the home belonged to the deceased. The pink liquid in the bucket at the entrance was nothing but diluted blood. Someone, possibly the homeowner herself, had tried to erase a trail leading from the bedroom to the living room, indicating that the body had been dragged. Despite the cleaning efforts, not all evidence was destroyed. Blood spatter was found in the corners of the room and on the walls. Moreover, a large knife lay at the entrance to the kitchen, and 3 smaller knives were found in the sink. Detectives were eager to speak with Danielle. Therefore, once doctors reported that her injuries were not life-threatening, she was questioned. During the interview, she repeatedly changed her statements. Initially, she claimed to have thought her husband died of heart disease. Later, she stated that he had taken his own life following an argument. However, experts refuted her claims. Such a wound is difficult to self-inflict, and individuals intending to end their life usually choose a simpler and less painful method. The autopsy showed that Michael died from blood loss. With timely medical help, his life could have been saved. Additionally, he had a lacerated left eye. Toxicological tests also revealed a high level of alcohol in his system. The investigation revealed that a few days before the incident, there was an argument between the spouses, witnessed by their elder daughter. Michael had been drinking and burst into the bathroom where Danielle was hiding. However, their daughter Jaden intervened, taking the bottle away from him. After this, Danielle left the house and returned once her husband had fallen asleep. According to the girl, it was the first time she had seen such a burst of anger in her father, for which he later apologized multiple times. She still maintained that he was a loving and caring father, while asserting that her mother was the instigator of conflicts. The next day, the couple reconciled. Michael invited his wife and children to a soccer game. However, according to witnesses, Danielle appeared upset and was virtually non-communicative. That evening, the parents dropped their kids off at a friend's house for a sleepover and were left alone. Later, Danielle stopped by McDonald's and returned home around 10:30 p.m. Upon entering the house, she found her husband drunk. During dinner, Danielle received a message from an unknown man. Michael saw it, bit off a piece of his hamburger and spit it at his wife. He then attacked her, attempting to strangle her. In self-defense, Danielle grabbed the first thing she could, a knife and stabbed him in the chest. He fell and began to bleed profusely. According to the defendant, she immediately called emergency services, but mistakenly dialed the wrong number. Her actions were later corroborated during the investigation. In a state of shock, she lay down next to Michael and fell asleep until morning. At least, that's how Danielle explained the 11 hours of inactivity. When asked by the prosecution why she lied during the emergency call and subsequent questioning, Mrs. Redlick explained that she was afraid. She was concerned that no one would believe she had acted in self-defense. There were reasons for this fear. Shortly before the incident, she had been involved in a scuffle with friends. When police arrived at the scene, she resisted, attempting to bite one of them. She also refused to cooperate with the investigation, leading to charges of disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. Danielle had been on probation for about a year. It was also established that the cuts on her wrists were self-inflicted. She claimed she had tried to end her life due to the emotional turmoil, but the nature of the injuries suggested otherwise. They were superficial and not life-threatening. Therefore, her claims were not believed. Investigators also discovered that Danielle was far from a role model. After learning of Michael's infidelities, she signed up on a dating site where she interacted with men and retaliated by being unfaithful. Her profile status declared that she was single and not in a relationship. Analysis of countless messages between Michael and Danielle showed that she still loved her husband. Once she learned of his affairs, she felt betrayed and disillusioned. She also found out that Michael planned to leave her, despite appearing repentant and desiring to mend their relationship. Danielle explained that it was hard for her to understand and accept her husband's actions. She was heartbroken that she had dedicated the best years of her life to a man who did not appreciate her. The prosecution used this information against her. The prosecutor argued that the crime was premeditated in a fit of rage because she could not forgive his infidelity and the impending divorce. Like Mr. Redlick, she was also prone to fits of anger, confirmed by their neighbors who noted that the couple often argued loudly, escalating into physical altercations. However, Michael and Danielle were described differently by those who knew them. Michael was portrayed positively as kind and helpful, while Danielle was seen as quarrelsome. Video evidence was presented showing the defendant acting irrationally and attacking her husband. Friends and Michael's brother agreed with this portrayal. One of them recalled calling her crazy, but assured that all would be well as long as steak knives were hidden. Danielle's lawyer argued that her actions were dictated by self-defense and the history of emotional and physical abuse. Relatives, often witnesses to their arguments, confirmed that Michael was rough and emotionally abusive. They also knew he frequently physically abused and humiliated her, although he never did so in their presence. Some family members reported that Danielle was nervous and quick-tempered, which only emerged after years of marriage. The prosecution clung to the fact that she effectively left her husband to die, which indicated she was waiting it out. They proved that her account logged into a dating app the night of the incident, suggesting premeditation driven by hatred and resentment, possibly even for financial gain. Following the divorce, Danielle stood to lose a portion of their accumulated wealth. At the time of Michael's death, her net worth was estimated at $1.2 million. It was also brought up that she had repeatedly changed her statements, seemingly trying to confuse the investigation and possibly tampered with evidence. However, the defense maintained that Mr. Redlick was a manipulator and predator. After his first wife's death, he pursued his stepdaughter relentlessly and molded a young woman to suit his needs. During the investigation, the prosecution offered the defendants a plea deal to admit to manslaughter, which would have resulted in only 10 years of imprisonment. However, she declined, despite the fact that if found guilty of first or second-degree murder, she faced a life sentence. She continued to insist on her innocence. The outcome of the trial was surprising to everyone. On July 17, 2022, the jury delivered their verdict. They found Danielle Redlick not guilty of premeditated murder, as they believed her actions were indeed in self-defense. However, they found her guilty of tampering with evidence, for which she received a 5-year suspended sentence. Having already served 3 years, these were credited to her. On August 5, 2022, the day the sentence was announced, the defendant was released in the courtroom. What do you think? Was the verdict fair? Or were the jurors cleverly misled into believing that Danielle's taking Michael's life was calculated and cold-blooded? The case of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, doomsday spouses. Crimes motivated by religious beliefs are not uncommon in criminal practice. Statistics show that every year, worldwide, over 100,000 people fall victim to religious fanatics. Often these victims do not share the fanatics' orthodox views. The case of the deranged duo, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, shook the world a few years ago and remains unresolved to this day. This story has been covered in media outlets across various countries, shocking and baffling people. It's a tale entwined with corrupt passion, belief in one's own exceptionalism, greed, and a complete lack of moral principles. 5 members of their own families, including 2 children, fell victim to this couple. Currently, the legal proceedings against the spouses from hell, as the press has dubbed them, are still ongoing. They face capital punishment for their heinous acts. However, they not only deny their guilt, but also seriously hope to escape punishment or receive minimal sentences. But let's start from the beginning and try to unravel this horrifying and complex story, an attempt to understand how people who claim to have found God completely lost their humanity. Who is Chad Daybell, and how did he become a leader of a religious movement? Chad Guy Daybell was born on August 11, 1968, in the small town of Provo, Utah, located 18 miles south of Salt Lake City. He grew up in a simple, even humble family, and was a quiet, shy child. Chad was an average student in school, without any notable talents or athletic achievements, and he was self-conscious about his weight. After finishing high school, Chad, not without difficulty, enrolled at Brigham Young University, BYU, in Utah, graduating in 1992 with a bachelor's degree in journalism. During his college years, he married a modest girl named Tamara, or simply Tammy Douglas. The couple quickly had 5 children, sons Seth, Mark, and Garth, and daughters Emma and Leah. After completing his studies, the young father worked as an editor at a local daily newspaper. However, due to the family's constant financial struggles, he also worked as a night watchman at a small church and as a gravedigger at the cemetery next to it. Since Tammy did not work outside the home and focused solely on household chores and raising their children, the family barely made ends meet. At one point, Chad decided to use his journalism education to write his own religious-themed book. His first work was published in 1999 and resembled a collection of religious stories or religious-themed fantasy. Surprisingly, the book became a hit, earning him a decent amount of money. Chad immediately quit his jobs at the cemetery and the newspaper to focus on his writing career. About a year and a half later, he published a book titled 1 Foot in the Grave. This was a popular science work in which he described his experiences as a gravedigger, pondered death, the afterlife, and soul reincarnations. In 2004, Daybell founded his own book company, Spring Creek, which he used to self-publish his works. These works discussed his beliefs about the impending end of the world, Judgment Day, and more. Some say that over the years, Chad's religious beliefs became more extreme. Chad Daybell published dozens of fiction and popular science books infused with religious themes. He began to conduct podcasts, audio, and video lectures aimed at helping people prepare for the second coming of Christ. Chad called himself an apocalyptic writer and claimed he could see the future, hearing voices of the deceased giving prophecies meant only for him. The story of Lori Vallow, biography, early marriages, children. Lori Ryan Vallow, née Cox, was born on June 26, 1973, in the picturesque city of Loma Linda, California. She grew up in a large family, alongside 2 older brothers and 3 sisters. Her parents, Denise and Barry Cox, worked tirelessly to provide for their many children. From an early age, Lori was particularly close to her brother Alex, with whom she shared a trusting relationship. He always stood up for his little sister and protected her. Even in her school years, Lori became a true beauty, with no shortage of admirers. An attractive, charismatic blonde with a slender figure and a captivating smile, she loved being the center of attention, and was a spirited and adventurous person. In the spring of 1992, at the age of 18, Lori married her high school sweetheart Nelson Yanes, with whom she had started a relationship in her senior year. However, The young couple soon realized they had rushed into marriage and were not ready for family life, leading to the dissolution of their marriage in less than a year. They did not have any children together. In the fall of 1995, Lori remarried, this time to a man named William LaJoya. A year later, the couple had a son, Colby, but their marriage ended in 1998, just 2 years later. The boy remained in his mother's custody. In early 2001, Lori entered into her third marriage with Joseph Anthony Ryan, who officially adopted her son from her previous marriage. A year later, the couple welcomed a daughter, Tylee, but this marriage too collapsed in 2005. Notably, soon after her divorce from Joseph, an incident occurred when her ex-husband came to visit the children. He was assaulted by Lori's brother, Alex, who claimed in court that he was defending his sister's honor, as Ryan had insulted her. As a result, Cox was sentenced to a fine and a short prison term. Marriage to Charles Vallow. Soon after divorcing her third husband, Lori met a man named Charles Anthony Vallow, whom she married in February 2006. He was 17 years her senior, but this significant age difference did not pose an obstacle for them. Charles had been previously married and had 2 teenage sons from his past relationships, Zachary and Nicholas. The couple initially lived in Nevada with Lori's children from her previous marriages, while Charles's sons visited during holidays or weekends. Charles owned a small business that provided a stable income to support the family. Lori, who had not pursued further education, did not work, but her husband never reproached her for it. In 2014, the couple officially adopted a young boy named Joshua Jackson, or simply JJ Vallow, who was Charles's grandnephew. JJ had autism and required expensive therapy, which his relative could provide. Towards the end of 2014, the family decided to move to the Hawaiian Islands, specifically to the island of Kauai. By this time, Colby, as well as Charles's older children, were adults living independently, so the Vallow family moved to the island as a group of 4, Lori, Charles, Tylee, and JJ. The family settled in a popular tourist area, deciding to open their own beach bar specializing in fresh juices, smoothies, refreshing drinks, and non-alcoholic cocktails. Despite all their efforts, the availability of raw materials, and Charles's experience in trade, the business quickly failed due to intense competition. Around this time, Lori became interested in religious literature and was particularly drawn to a series of books titled Standing in Holy Places by the aforementioned Chad Daybell. She became so captivated by the occult writer's views and thoughts that she became almost obsessed with his ideas. She purchased all his works and read them daily. The meeting of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. In 2016, the family was forced to leave Hawaii and return to the mainland. They settled in Arizona, and while Charles worked hard to provide for the family, his wife Lori increasingly immersed herself in religion, drifting away from reality. In October 2018, Lori and her close friend Melanie attended an event in a neighboring town called Preparing People for the Second Coming of Christ, led by Chad Daybell. As a devoted fan and follower, Lori was thrilled at the opportunity to meet him in person. Lori sat in the front row, her eyes fixed on Chad. He also noticed the attractive blonde, and after the event, when the writer and religious speaker decided to personally engage with his followers, Lori, as expected, stayed behind. She hung on his every word and asked if she could touch his hand. After doing so, Daybell looked into her eyes and said that they had been husband and wife in 7 previous reincarnations. Chad and Lori exchanged contact information and began communicating daily. A few weeks later, when Lori's husband went to Nevada for work, she invited the preacher to hold a gathering at her home. That day, about a dozen people gathered at the Vallow house, discussing God, the Judgment Day, and the Second Coming. Lori and Chad also agreed to collaborate on preparing people for the dreadful judgment. The pair started conducting podcasts dedicated to this event, leading sermons and writing articles. Lori became increasingly detached from reality and her family, but Charles, unfortunately, did not immediately notice this change. He thought it was a temporary obsession and would soon wear off. By the time he realized how far things had gone, it was already too late. Soon, Lori began talking about dark spirits and zombies, telling family and friends that she was chosen by God for a special mission. Part of this mission involved destroying the spirits of darkness, demons, and all evil. Charles's attempts to bring his wife back to reality failed, and more so, she began to see him as one of the dark entities that needed to be destroyed. The tragic end of Charles Vallow. By the end of 2018, the marriage between Lori and Charles Vallow was on the brink of collapse. In February 2019, during Charles's week-long business trip, Lori changed all the locks in their shared home. Upon his return, Charles found himself locked out of his own house, noticed his personal car, the family truck missing, and discovered that a substantial amount of $35,000 had been withdrawn from his account. Charles loudly called out for his wife and tried to enter the house. Lori, in a frenzied state, rushed outside, hurling threats and curses. She screamed that her husband's soul had long died, his body possessed by a demon, repeatedly exclaiming, "I don't know who you are and what you've done with my husband." Without hesitation, Charles went to the police station and reported Lori for theft, obstruction to his home and children. He expressed concerns about her threats of physical harm against him, leading to the issuance of a protective order prohibiting Lori from approaching him. The statements Charles made that evening were recorded, a standard procedure. He spoke about his wife's excessive religious fervor, her belief in an imminent end of the world, and her tendency to classify people as either light or demonic beings. The officers, while asking clarifying questions, openly mocked him, but still issued the protective order. The very next day, Charles filed for divorce and changed the beneficiary of his $1 million life insurance policy from Lori to his mother and sister. His lawyers stated that Charles was concerned about the well-being of JJ, who required special care. He knew his mother and sister would responsibly manage the insurance payout and take care of the boy in case anything happened to him. As for Tylee, her stepfather had not legally adopted her and couldn't include the legally unrelated minor in the documents. A few months later, Mr. Vallow made the fateful mistake of revoking the protective order, hoping to reconcile with Lori and save their marriage. He began visiting his ex-wife's home, missing the children, and still hopeful of family reconciliation. On July 11, 2019, Charles was fatally shot twice in the chest when he arrived to see his children. Alex Cox, Lori's brother, called emergency services and confessed to the shooting. He claimed self-defense, alleging that Charles attacked him first with a baseball bat. In response, he drew a pistol and fired twice without aiming. The incident was witnessed by the homeowner and children. Their testimonies were somewhat consistent, and the court ruled the incident as an unintentional killing in self-defense. Notably, Alex's head injury was minor, despite Charles's background as a former baseball player capable of inflicting severe harm with a bat. The same day Charles's body was taken to the morgue, Lori threw a party at the house with music, numerous guests, and a poolside disco, right where her husband had been shot and where traces of blood were still visible. She didn't arrange for his funeral or inform anyone about the incident. Charles's sons, mother, sister, and other relatives only learned about his death a week later when his unclaimed body was still in the morgue. A series of mysterious disappearances and fatalities. Shortly after her husband's demise, Lori sold their Arizona home and, along with her children, relocated to a town called Rexburg in Idaho, settling close to where Chad and his wife Tammy lived. Alex Cox, Lori's brother, moved with his sister and settled in the same housing complex. Lori enrolled her son in a school for children with special needs, but her 16-year-old daughter, Tylee, did not attend any educational institution. She was seldom seen outside, leading many neighbors to remain unaware of the second child's existence. Around the same time, Lori referred to her daughter as a dark entity in a phone conversation with a friend. On September 8, 2019, the children, their mother, and Uncle Alex went to Yellowstone Park, where Chad Daybell joined them. Several photographs from that trip showed Tylee, but after that day, she was never seen alive again. On September 24th of the same year, Lori withdrew her son's documents from the school, claiming he would henceforth be homeschooled. The 7-year-old boy was also not seen afterward. less than a month later, on October 19th, Chad's 49-year-old wife, Tammy, passed away suddenly. According to Chad, she had a cold with a cough and presumably died from respiratory failure in her sleep. With no signs of violence on her body, her death was ruled natural. Chad categorically refused an autopsy to definitively determine the cause, a decision that oddly raised no suspicions. Following his wife's sudden passing, Chad received approximately $500,000 in insurance payouts. 2 weeks later, Chad and Lori traveled to the Hawaiian Islands, where they officially married in a beachside ceremony. This event came as a total shock and surprise to Daybell's children, who were still mourning their mother and couldn't comprehend their father's actions. Upon returning to Arizona, the couple lived together and misled others by claiming Lori's children were with relatives, or even asserting she had no children at all. They also rented a small unit at a local storage facility, where they later moved all the belongings of the children as if they never existed in the home. Another month later, on December 12, 2019, Alex Cox died suddenly in his home. The cause of death appeared to be a heart attack, but at his sister's insistence, no autopsy was conducted, and the incident was deemed natural. Investigation, arrest, and horrific discoveries. As time passed, more people persistently questioned Lori about the whereabouts of her children. She skillfully lied to neighbors and acquaintances, but it was more complicated with relatives. Her eldest son, Colby, who had little contact with his mother after moving away, tried earnestly to reach his younger sister. Initially, Lori answered from her daughter's phone, pretending to be Tylee, but Colby soon sensed something was amiss. Meanwhile, Charles's relatives demanded access to JJ. They wanted to take the boy for holidays or weekends or simply talk to him on the phone, but Lori consistently refused or made up absurd excuses. Eventually, the boy's grandmother reported his disappearance to the police, and soon after, Colby also approached the police to find his younger sister. When law enforcement officers knocked on Lori's door and asked her to bring the children for a conversation, she lied that they were visiting relatives. This information proved false, and the police returned to her home. They gave her a week to appear at the police station with the children, but instead, she and her husband fled to Hawaii again. On February 20th, 2020, Lori was arrested on the island of Kauai and taken back to Arizona. A search was conducted in her and Chad's home, but neither the children nor any signs that they had been there were found. Now her husband Chad, who had been defending her and insisting she had no children, was also under suspicion. It was only on June 9th that police discovered human remains buried in the backyard of the couple's home. Forensic analysis revealed that they were the bodies of the missing Tylee and her younger brother JJ. Chad was immediately detained for concealing evidence and complicity. The authorities then decided to exhume the bodies of Tammy Daybell and Alex Cox to establish the true causes of their deaths. In both cases, traces of chemicals capable of inducing heart failure were found, leading to the conclusion that these individuals did not die naturally. The trial process. The trial of the spouses commenced in January 2021. They faced charges of conspiring to commit first-degree criminal acts, grand theft through deceit, and insurance fraud. Moreover, the demise of Charles Vallow was reclassified from self-defense to premeditated criminal action. Witnesses testifying in court stated that Lori referred to her children as dark entities and promised to save their souls. There were speculations that the deaths of 16-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ might have had ritualistic elements. Notably, the adolescent girl's body was partially burned. Weeks before, Chad had sent Lori an email rating people, where he assigned Tylee a 2 as a dark spirit. Given the totality of the charges, both spouses faced the possibility of capital punishment. However, in May 2021, Vallow's defense team succeeded in having her declared incompetent, halting the trial process. Simultaneously, all 5 of Daybell's adult children insist on their father's innocence, believing he was framed by Lori and Alex. In 2022, after treatment in a psychiatric facility, Vallow was again deemed fit to stand trial and answer for her actions. In March 2023, the judge ruled out capital punishment as a sentence for the woman, a decision the prosecution is still attempting to contest. In July of the same year, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The trial against Chad continues, and he still faces the prospect of capital punishment. It is worth noting that this story inspired the book When the Moon Turns to Blood by investigative journalist Lily Sotail, as well as a 2021 television movie by Lifetime Movie Network titled Doomsday Mom: The Lori Vallow Story, starring Lauren Lee Smith. In addition, Netflix released a 3-part documentary series in 2022 called Sins of Our Mother, which includes an episode dedicated to Lori's eldest child, her son Colby. I'm tired. I don't understand how long this can go on, and what am I waiting for? I really loved him. I loved him with all my heart. Yes, I was too young a girl then, when we got married, when we stood in front of the altar and his parents be damned, when I swore before God that I would love him forever and only heaven would part us. Why can't I take it back? Do I have to torture myself day in and day out just because I made those promises? I haven't loved him for a long time. Just like he doesn't love me. He only loves himself, his parents, and our children. But who will love me? In these moments of despondency, I feel that even God has turned his back on me. How else could he have given me to this family for whom I am nothing? Who only remember I exist when they need something? Summer, clean this up. Summer, take out the trash. Summer, damn it. Can you stop stomping your feet so loud? I'm sick of it. I have to tell Will everything. Take the kids and get out of this house. But who's gonna let me go? Especially with the kids. Will's dad won't even let me leave the house. I hope I stay alive at least. This entry was made by Summer Inman in her personal diary, which she kept hidden from her husband and his parents. This diary, the one place where she could express her thoughts and not be afraid of being judged or even punished. 1983, Logan, Ohio. In a small American town of only 40,000 people, a new evangelical church called Tabernacle of Faith opens, which none of the residents had ever heard of before. The founder of the church, David Oyedepo, traveled to the town from Nigeria and told the congregation that he had an 18-hour meeting with God, during which the Almighty told him that it was time to free the world from the oppression of the devil through preaching and prayer. David Oyedepo was an extremely charismatic preacher, and that is why the Tabernacle of Faith Church became very popular in Logan. It was at this church that Bill and Sandra Inman met. Bill was already 18 years old at that time and played musical instruments at the church on Sundays. Sandra also attended church with her parents. Sandra recalls that the young musician parishioner very much liked her parents, and they did not hesitate to allow the young people to play a wedding. A year later, Bill and Sandra have a son, Will. According to family traditions, Will was born with his parents, went to church, and when he was 17 years old, then just like his father, met in the Tabernacle of Faith with a very young 15-year-old summer cook. Only with marriage young people were not in a hurry and waited until Summer was 18 years old. In 2004, after their wedding, Will's parents insisted that the young people lived with them. Summer did not like this idea, of course, but her husband was very dependent on his father and could not cross him, so she left her parents' house and moved into the house of the Inman family. That same year, another turning point in the Inman family's life occurs. Bill creates his own flock and remodels the family garage, formerly used as a workshop, into a self-proclaimed church. From Summer Inman's diary, Will's father has changed a lot. I literally don't recognize him. Tonight at family dinner, he told us that he hears the voice of God in his dreams and that he wants to share this revelation with others for their own good. Will himself seems to realize that his father is becoming a religious fanatic. I've seen him roll his eyes, but what can he say against it? Yes, indeed, to some, like Summer, Bill Inman's idea may seem delusional, but locals came to his garage in droves, prayed, listened intently to their leaders' speeches, and even made donations. In 2005, Will and Summer had their firstborn son. They named him Alex. But right after the baby was born, everyone realized that their family was in huge financial trouble. The women were forbidden to work anywhere. They were obliged to do only household chores, and 4 adults and 1 infant cannot live only on donations from parishioners and on Will's rare part-time jobs. At a family council, Bill said they were moving to Florida. In Florida, Bill and Will did construction work while the women still stayed home and raised baby Alex. From Summer's diary, not much changed with the move to Florida. All day Will and his father disappear at work, and Sandra and I stay home with Alex all day and night. When is Will going to grow up and be on his own? I don't think I can wait for that. Having come to the conclusion that in Florida a lot of money cannot earn, Bill Inman decides to return to his native state, but because of non-payment of taxes, their house in Logan was taken away, and the court ruled a ban on its subsequent redemption, so they moved to a rented house in the countryside Vinton, which is not far from Logan. There, Summer also gives birth to 2 daughters, Kelly and Alana. From Summer's diary, we still don't have any money. Will wants me to have 12 children for him. I sometimes laugh in his face, which he takes offense to, and sometimes even stops talking to me. In 2010, Bill Inman, now officially the leader of Tabernacle of Faith Church, and together with his wife Sandra, they register a non-profit organization called Mercy Ranch. A bright idea is born in his head: to build on behalf of the church a home for orphans, widows, and the homeless. But naturally, there was no money for the idea. However, the new leader found a way out of this situation. He invented a lottery, according to which the winner will win $200,000 and the remaining 99 people will receive no less valuable prizes. The remaining funds would be used to build the house Bill dreamed of. Television and radio ads were run, and Bill himself even went door to door at first, asking residents to participate in the charity lottery. The result was stunning. Bill Inman managed to raise $1 million. The grand prize drawing was scheduled for September 2010, but as you may have guessed, no drawing took place in September, just like it didn't take place in October or November. Bill Inman simply defrauded the people who trusted him, and he had no plans to return the money to anyone either. It is during this period that Will's father hires Adam Peters to take care of the landscaping on their property, as well as other household chores. Adam sees Summer all the time and begins to feel sympathy for her. What he doesn't realize is that Summer and Will are having a crisis in their relationship. Nevertheless, he does not give up and gives the young woman signs of attention. After a while, Summer filed for divorce. She took the children and went to her parents. There she got a job for the first time in her life, a cleaner at the bank. Unfortunately, because of her early marriage and constant confinement in the Inman home, she had no education and no work experience other than raising children, so Summer didn't expect to get a better paying job. But deep down she was glad even that, because for the first time in many years she felt independent, and for the first time nobody told her anything. Despite her resentment toward Will, she didn't mind her father seeing the children as much as he saw fit. The children, in her opinion, needed their father as much as they needed their grandparents. Indeed, Bill Inman, despite his tyrannical character, treated the children very affectionately and caring. To deny this was foolish. One day in December 2010, a bailiff came to the Inman house and ordered the family to leave the house for non-payment of rent. Summer found out about it, and so she went over to the house to pick up all the things she hadn't had time to pack when she moved in with her parents. It was scary to show up at a house where she was now considered a traitor, so she called Adam to help her with the packing. When the Inman family saw that Summer had arrived with her new lover, they wouldn't let anyone in the house. They hurled all sorts of curses at them and promised that all of Summer's belongings in the house would be burned in the backyard. Even the police couldn't help with the conflict, as Will attacked and even beat up a policeman who arrived, while Adam, who was shocked by what he had seen, shouted that he would find him and kill him. That same day, Summer decided to file a report against her husband. In it, she pointed out that Will had never been the same, that it wasn't until after the wedding that he became in complete control of her. Her calls, texts, emails, he even controlled her lunchtime and how much she needed to eat, how much time to spend in the shower, and how much time to be outdoors. Periodically, he even took her phone away from her, and Summer could be out of touch for a week, even with her own parents. He also admitted to her that he wanted to find a second wife, and without hiding from Summer, he registered on dating sites where he posted intimate photos of himself and openly corresponded with other women. In her diary, Summer often wrote that she wanted to divorce Will, but was afraid. This fear was understandable. Will had warned her numerous times that if she divorced him, he would shoot her. The police took a statement from a frightened Summer, who had harbored the fear for so many years, and came to the Inman home again. When questioned, Will answered yes. He took his wife's phone away from her, but only so she wouldn't talk to her lover 24 hours a day. Yes, he watched her diet, but only because he cared about her health. His answers didn't seem credible to the police, and they forbade him to go near his ex-wife, and he also received a fine and probation for this behavior. The Inman family could not ignore such, as it seemed to them, abuse of their son, and they in turn wrote a response, but already on Adam Peters. In their statement, they pointed out that when he worked in their house, he showed an unhealthy interest in Summer's young children, and that the subsequent presence of children in his company could end badly. Their fictions, of course, were not confirmed. After that, the worst thing in Summer's life happened. Close to midnight, March 22, 2011, Summer was finishing her work at the bank, which is in the heart of Logan. The branch itself had closed by then, and all she had to do was clean up her workspace, dusting and taking out the trash. She'd texted Adam to tell him that she didn't have much time left and that she'd be home soon. It was already 12 o'clock at night. Summer was late, although she had never been late before. Adam was beginning to get seriously worried. There was no telling what this Will might be up to. Peters decided to meet Summer. By then, the doors to the ward were locked. No lights were on in the windows, which meant Summer wasn't there. Adam walked around the building but didn't see anyone, so he went to the dumpsters where the young woman was hauling the trash bags that had accumulated all day. She wasn't there either, but near the bins he found Summer's things, her purse, her cell phone, and her red jacket, which was lying in the grass, a little farther away from her things. There was no time to hesitate. He immediately dialed the phone number of the police. The police arrived and did a search of the belongings, then knocked on the bank and interviewed the security guards, to which they said that Summer had gone home over an hour ago, and they hadn't seen her again. At the glow of the police car's lights, 3 people approached. As it turned out, they were witnesses to the kidnapping. The 2 women were out for an evening jog, and although it was already dark, they saw a white Ford drive up to the bank cleaner's house. 2 men in black masks get out and push the screaming woman into the back seat. At the woman's screams, another eyewitness ran up to the car and tried to save her, but the blonde woman behind the wheel sprayed him in the face with a gas can, and the guy fell down, and the car with the kidnappers drove away. The women were without phones, so they immediately ran to the nearest police station, where they interrupted each other very emotionally and tried to recount what they had seen. The police officers on duty only laughed at their story, naively believing that the night runners had made it all up. Who would think of kidnapping a bank cleaner with garbage bags in her hands? But as it turned out, the story was now pure truth. And because of the slowness of the cops, it was now impossible to find Summer on a hot lead. Like I said before, Logan is a small town. That's why the news of Summer's abduction by 3 unidentified men spread through the town overnight. By morning, proactive citizens had organized into groups to search for the missing woman. They scoured parks, vacant lots, abandoned warehouses, but Summer was nowhere to be found. A week before she disappeared, Will Inman tried to contest his child support payments. According to the court order, he was supposed to pay $150 for each child, but since his monthly salary was only $500, he asked that the payment be reduced to $150 for the 3 children in total. Will also asked for full custody of his children, but this was denied by the court. Since Summer was not in contact with anyone because of her long, reclusive life, the police suspicions fell only on the Inman family. They were found in the house of Bill's mother in a neighboring town. All three said that they had not heard anything about the disappearance, and on the day of the kidnapping, they were in Cleveland, where they wanted to find a new home. At that time, a GPS receiver was taken from the car. During the inspection, it was determined that it had been turned off during the period of Summer's abduction. The police also decided to check the Inman family's cell phones, which revealed that the family had not left Logan that night. Police soon received additional information that at 7:30 a.m. the morning of Summer's disappearance, the white Ford had stopped by a car wash where all three of them, Bill, Sandra, and Will, were dry cleaning the interior. The whole family was detained and taken in for questioning. Bill, who was already being led away under the arms of the police, shouted to his elderly mother that they were not guilty of anything, that it was the work of the devil against whom he and his parishioners were fighting. At the police station, the Inmans, as if bewitched, repeated the same thing, and only when it became clear that they had no alibi and they were facing execution, Sandra took the blame. From Sandra Inman's testimony, "Kidnapping Summer was my idea. It was my idea, and I was driving the white Ford that night. Of course, neither of us planned to kill Summer. I swear it was an accident. On the night of March 22nd, we drove up to the bank where Summer worked and waited a long time for her to finally finish her shift. At about 11 p.m., we saw her near the garbage cans near the bank. I drove up to her and my husband Bill and son Will, who hid their faces under black masks, pushed Summer into the car. Again, we had no intention of killing her. The only thing we wanted was for her to let us see the kids since we are family." Will, in an act of intimidation, tied Summer's hands and feet with plastic ties to keep her from running away. Apparently, one of the ties he tightened around her neck, he overestimated his strength, and Summer began to choke, and her face began to turn red. Will wanted to cut the tie, but he couldn't find a knife, and the knife we were taking with us had gotten under my seat, and when he did find it, it was too late. Summer was dead. Sandra Inman showed the place where they hid Summer's body. It was an old well near the Tabernacle of Faith Church. Yes, the same church where Bill and Sandra had first met, and then Will and Summer, the church where both had gotten married and where they'd gone to pray and confess for years. The autopsy confirmed Sandra's words. Summer had indeed died of asphyxiation. No other injuries were found on her body. In 2012, the court sentenced Bill Inman and Will Inman to life in prison, and Sandra Inman, despite taking all the blame, also received a life sentence, but the court allowed her to request parole after 15 years. Why is that? Apparently because, according to relatives, the women in the Inman family never decided anything. The whole family obediently obeyed only Bill, and if it was someone's cruel plan to regain custody of the children, it was his. And Sandra took the blame to save her husband and son, but she never succeeded.